So that when he had denied Jesus, Jesus turned and looked at Peter. And Peter felt the gaze of Jesus. Let's don't be like that. Let's don't be people who follow from afar, from a distance. We'll find another group who follow Jesus from a distance, but we see something welling up in them that makes them a little different from all the rest of the sinners. And I say they belong in the sinners also, because they were. Even the mother of Jesus, Mary, was at the cross. Jesus died for her. There's a song out this time of year we hear on the radio a lot, Mary, did you know? And it says something like, do you know that the baby you delivered will one day deliver you? That's a good line because it describes the truth. Jesus was born to be the Savior of sinners, and even Mary would need a Savior. We find a group of compassionate people, even at the cross. I want you to look with me at verse 55. It says, and this is Matthew 27:55, many women, not just a few, but many women who followed Jesus from Galilee. Now, Galilee was many miles north of Jerusalem. And they had traveled all that way following Jesus. What was a disciple? A disciple was a follower of Jesus. They literally followed him. And why? Many women who followed Jesus from Galilee ministering to him. Now see how different that is? Why did most people follow Jesus? Well, he handed out miracles. He fed the thousands. He healed the sick, the lame, the blind. He fed the hungry. There were things that he could give them. They could look to Jesus and say, what have you done for me lately? And yet not these women. These women who followed Jesus from Galilee were ministering to him. Jesus had no home. He had gotten run out of Nazareth. And he said the foxes have holes and dens, and the birds have their nests, and the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. These women recognized that he had needs, and they ministered to him, following him. And it says they were looking on from afar. Now I see a little difference here in what they were doing, what Peter was doing. Peter is a man who was willing to brandish a sword in defense of Jesus. Even boasted, saying, you're not going to be crucified on my watch. I've got a sword. And he used the sword. So Peter is not afraid. The reason Peter is lagging back is he wants to watch what's happening and not lose touch with Jesus, but doesn't want the responsibility that's going to come with what Jesus is about to face. And that's the way a lot of people approach religion today. But we can learn from Peter. But these women were looking on from afar, and I think for a different reason. They wanted to be close enough to Jesus so that they could, as they always were, be there for him. And yet, if they got too close, they knew what that meant too. That they would be gathered up in the melee and they would do him no good. And so they were keeping the right distance. Verse 56 says, among these women were Mary Magdalene. That'd be like saying Mary from Huntsville. She was from Magdala. That wasn't her name, Mary Magdalene. We don't say Terry Huntsville. It'd be Terry from Huntsville. So Mary Magdalene. This is identifying this Mary from Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's son. We read of 5 Marys. I thought, why so many Marys? Did you know that Mary is the number 1 female name? Of all these years, that's number 1. There's a reason for that. Mary was precious to the Jews and was a very wonderful Bible character. That's the one that God chose to be the human mother of his son, God in the flesh. But Mary is a derivative of Miriam. Miriam was the sister of Moses, the great lawgiver in the Old Testament. And Miriam was respected as a great character in the Old Testament. And so many distinguishes between these, but these were all women who followed Jesus and helped him out of their own substance. Now, we read in verse 61 that Mary Magdalene was there and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. This is after Jesus had died, took his body down from the tomb and put it, the cross, and put it in the tomb and sealed it. And they went to watch what would happen at the tomb. You see, there were many that wanted to watch the crucifixion, some out of curiosity, some out of compulsion, like Simon of Cyrene, some out of beauty, like those soldiers, some out of compassion, like these women. But you find that they didn't give up at the cross. They went on to the tomb. They were the last at the cross. They were the first at the tomb. You see where I'm headed with this? Even though these women were sinners, I would guess you would have to say, out of all the sinners that were there, this was the most compassionate group. I grow more and more fond as I read about these women and what they were doing for Jesus and how tender they felt toward the man who had taught them, who had died for their sins, and they had listened to what he had said, and they were anxious to see. And they had gone to the tomb, and they were there, not only sitting to watch the crucifixion, but sitting opposite the tomb for the events there. And on the next day, verse 62, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember, while he was still alive, that deceiver," referring to Jesus, "said, 'After 3 days I will rise.'" And so there was the teaching Jesus had given about his resurrection that was well known. So there were those who were wanting to seal the tomb, make it fast and sure, and the women who were there waiting and watching. Chapter 28 says, "After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him and became like dead men. But the angel answered and said to the women," last at the cross, first at the tomb. These women were the compassionate souls. Well, what did the angel say to the women? "Do not be afraid." Have you noticed when a human being is in the presence of an angelic being, the angel will usually say, "Do not fear"? It must be so awesome that it's obvious that the human is in great fear, trembling, and these women must have been just trembling with fear. And he says, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified." Their actions were communicating to heaven. Heaven was observing the events of these women, and the women, by their actions, were showing what they were doing. Well, what were they doing? They were, it says, seeking Jesus who was crucified. It did not matter to them that Jesus had died. Their faith was in what Jesus had taught them. That the tabernacle could be torn down, and in 3 days it would rise again. He would raise it up again. He was talking about the tabernacle of his body. And he got very specific, and these women believed it. They believed it to the standpoint that they were still seeking Jesus who was crucified, even if he was buried in a tomb.